On the day of my brother's birthday, my parents rented a huge lake house, hired a private chef, and invited all his friends. For my birthday, they left a store-bought cupcake and a card that said, "Maybe next year." When I complained, my mom gave that mocking smile and said I was overreacting as always. I just took a picture of that gift and bought a ticket to Japan. Later that same night, my dad texted me, "Where are you?" The airport was quiet, just the sound of wheels rolling across the tile and the low murmur of announcements. My flight to Tokyo was in 40 minutes. I'd never left the country before, and I didn't speak more than a few words of Japanese, but I didn't care. It wasn't about where I was going. It was about getting away from them. I'd taken the picture of the cupcake, cheap frosting, plastic lid, that stupid card, and posted it on my private story. No caption, just the photo. A few friends reacted with that awkward emoji people use when they don't know what to say. My cousin Sophie texted, "That's messed up, dude." I didn't reply. I just booked the ticket and packed a backpack. I could already imagine the conversation happening at the lake house that night. My brother, laughing about something stupid his friends said. My parents, bragging about the chef and the rental view. If they noticed my absence, I doubted they'd care until morning. Maybe not even then. The truth was, it wasn't just about this birthday. It was every year. Every single one. My brother Daniel was the miracle kid, the one who almost didn't make it after being born premature, the one mom said God had a special plan for. I was the older one, the quiet, independent one, the one who never needed much attention. They said it like it was a compliment, but it never felt like one. When the boarding announcement came, I stood up and silenced my phone. I didn't delete my dad's message, but I marked it as read. It was small, but it felt like a line drawn in ink. The flight was long and sleepless. I watched the in-flight map, the little plane crawling over the Pacific. I thought about what I was running toward, but there was nothing concrete. I just wanted to know what it felt like to choose myself, even if it was stupid, even if it didn't make sense. When I landed in Tokyo, I felt both weightless and empty. The air was different. Cleaner, colder. The signs glowed in colors I couldn't read. I wandered through customs, barely thinking. I checked into a small hotel near Shinjuku Station, paid for 2 nights up front, and collapsed on the bed still wearing my shoes. It wasn't until the next morning that I saw the flood of messages. First, my mom. "This isn't funny." Then my dad again. "Call us. We're worried." Then Daniel. "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" And then one from Sophie. "They posted about you. Something's off." My hands started shaking. I opened social media and saw it. My parents' post. A family photo from last year. The caption read, "Please help us find our son. He left home last night. If anyone has seen him, contact us immediately." They made it sound like I'd run away, like I was unstable, like I was the problem. Underneath, hundreds of comments. Neighbors, church people, old classmates praying for my safe return. Nobody mentioned the cupcake. Nobody mentioned the years of being ignored. Just sympathy for the perfect family with the missing son. I sat there staring at the screen, heart pounding so hard it hurt. It wasn't worry they felt. It was damage control. They were terrified of what people would think, not of losing me. I knew then that I couldn't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Still, something about the post made my skin crawl. The way they worded it, the timing. It felt rehearsed, almost planned. And then I noticed something else. The photo they used. The one from last year. It wasn't cropped. It showed the full family, including Daniel. But his wrist had a bracelet I didn't recognize. A red band with black letters. And right below the photo, someone had commented, "Wait, isn't that from the lake house security feed?" At first, I thought it was just some random comment. But when I clicked on the profile, my stomach tightened. It was someone from Daniel's friend group, a guy named Chris who'd been at the lake house that weekend. The phrase security feed kept echoing in my head. I zoomed in on the photo again. It wasn't a selfie or an old picture from my mom's phone. The angle was strange, slightly tilted as if it came from a mounted camera. My brother's eyes weren't even looking at the lens. He was looking off to the side mid-laugh. I checked the timestamp. It was uploaded that morning, but the metadata still read, "Captured 2 days ago, the same night I left." I didn't know what to make of it. I tried to convince myself it was just some weird mix-up. Maybe they'd lost their old photos and grabbed something from the rental's website. But a part of me knew that wasn't true. My parents were careful about appearances. They wouldn't risk posting something public without checking it first. I messaged Chris privately. I just asked, "What did you mean about the lake house feed?" He read it almost immediately. I watched the typing bubble appear and disappear 3 times before he finally sent a reply. "Bro, you didn't hear? Something happened to Daniel. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I asked what he meant, but Chris didn't reply. He just went offline. I switched back to the family post, scrolling through new comments. A few mentioned sending prayers and hoping both boys are safe. Both. Not just me. Then I saw a new post from my mom's account. A photo of the lake house dock, police tape in the background. The caption said, "We are cooperating with authorities and ask for privacy at this time." My mind went blank. I read it over and over, trying to make sense of it. Authorities. Privacy. I tried calling my dad, but he didn't pick up. I left a voicemail, though my voice shook so badly, it barely sounded like me. I said I was safe, that I was in Tokyo, that I needed to know what happened. No one called back. I spent the rest of the day scrolling through every local news outlet I could find from our town in Oregon. It didn't take long. There it was. Police investigating incident at Lake House celebration. The article didn't name names at first, but the details were clear enough. A 19-year-old male was found unconscious near the property's dock. Circumstances remain unclear. Daniel was 19. I felt sick. I didn't even realize I was crying until my throat started to burn. For the first time since leaving, I wanted to go home, not because I forgave them, but because I needed answers. But even as that thought formed, another one followed. What if they think I did something? The article said police were reviewing footage obtained from the property's security system, the same feed Chris had mentioned. My parents had posted that image for everyone to see, and it came from that footage, so why use it now? Why not tell the truth about where it came from? I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I pictured the dock. The sound of water, the laughter, the celebration I wasn't invited to. The next morning, my dad finally replied to my voicemail, not with a call, but with a short message. "Stay where you are for now. Please don't contact anyone." No explanation, no mention of Daniel. Just that. I reread it a dozen times, waiting for something else to come through, but nothing did. By evening, a new article appeared online, this one with names. Daniel Harper remains in critical condition following an incident during a private celebration. Police are investigating possible foul play. And right beneath that, authorities are also seeking information about the whereabouts of his older brother, Ryan Harper, who reportedly left the country hours before the incident. I dropped my phone. It hit the floor and slid under the bed, but I couldn't move to get it. They weren't looking for me because they were worried. They were looking for me because they thought I did it. For a long time, I just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. My whole body was tense, like I was bracing for a blow that never came. The TV in the room was playing some Japanese morning show, cheerful voices I couldn't understand, but all I could hear was that sentence from the article repeating in my head. Authorities are also seeking information about his older brother, Ryan Harper. It didn't even sound real. It sounded like someone else's life, but it was mine. I finally picked up the phone again. My hands were still shaking. I typed out a message to my mom. Something short like, "I didn't do anything. Please tell them that." But before I could hit send, I noticed the little check mark next to her name had turned gray. She'd blocked me. That was when it hit me. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting themselves. I tried calling Sophie next. She answered on the second ring, whispering like she was hiding somewhere. She said everyone back home was talking about it, that reporters were calling the house, that police had already searched my parents' place. When I asked about Daniel, she hesitated. I could hear the sound of her swallowing before she said, "He's in a coma, Ryan. They don't know if he's going to wake up." I couldn't speak. My throat felt locked. Sophie kept talking, her voice trembling, saying she knew I'd never hurt him, but it didn't matter. The narrative was already spreading. My parents had told people I'd been acting unstable, that I'd left after a fight, that I'd had issues with jealousy for years. They were rewriting everything. I felt this mix of rage and disbelief, like something was breaking inside my chest. I told Sophie I had proof. The cupcake photo, the timestamps, the flight records, but she stopped me and said I shouldn't contact anyone directly. "They're saying you ran away because you couldn't handle what you did. You need a lawyer, Ryan." When she said that, I realized how bad it really was. I barely remember the rest of the call. I think I thanked her. I think I told her I'd figure something out. But when I hung up, I just sat there again, motionless. I couldn't go home, and I couldn't stay hidden forever. Every headline, every comment under the police post, they all painted me as the jealous brother who snapped, but none of it made sense. Why would I hurt Daniel? We hadn't even argued that week. The last message he sent me was a dumb meme about a cat. Then I remembered the bracelet, the red one from the photo, the one I didn't recognize. I tried zooming in again, but the resolution was too low. All I could make out were black letters. Maybe initials. Maybe a logo. I went back to Chris's page, hoping he'd posted something else, but his account was gone. Deleted or deactivated. At that point, I realized I couldn't just wait. If I wanted the truth, I'd have to find it myself. I spent the next few hours online, checking every detail I could about the lake house. It turned out it was part of a property management company that offered short-term rentals for private events. On their website, in the fine print, it said the property was equipped with outdoor security cameras for guest safety. If the police had that footage, it could clear me, but only if I could see it first. The problem was, I had no way to get access from overseas. I needed someone local, someone I could trust. I hesitated for a long time before finally messaging Sophie again. I told her I needed her help. Not to contact the police, just to check something for me. She didn't answer right away, and for a moment I thought maybe she'd changed her mind, but then a message appeared. Tell me what to do. I asked her to go to the lake house if she could, just to look around, maybe take photos near the dock. I told her about the cameras, about how something felt off. She replied, "Okay, I'll try tonight, but if they find out I talked to you, I'm done." I promised to be careful. For the first time since everything started, I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe we could prove I wasn't there. Maybe the footage would show who really was, but that hope didn't last long. A few hours later, I got a new message from Sophie. It wasn't a text, it was a photo. It showed the lake house. Police tape still up, the dock half lit by floodlights. But what made my stomach drop wasn't the scene. It was the figure standing near the water's edge, blurry, dark hoodie, turned toward the camera. The caption below it said, "He's been here for a while, just staring at the water." Then Sophie sent one more message. "Ryan, I think it's your dad." I didn't blink for several seconds after reading that message. My eyes burned, but I couldn't look away from the photo. The man in the hoodie wasn't facing the camera, but there was something about the way he stood, shoulders stiff, head slightly tilted, that made my stomach twist. It looked like him. I asked Sophie if she was sure. She said she'd seen his car parked down the road, half hidden under some trees. It was their black SUV, the same one he used for work. "He's not supposed to be here," she wrote. "They said the area is closed off for investigation." I told her to leave immediately. She didn't reply right away, and those few minutes felt endless. Finally, she sent a short text. "I'm leaving now. I'll message when I'm home," but she didn't. I waited half an hour, then an hour. I called her 3 times. No answer. Her phone started going straight to voicemail. By that point, my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I kept checking the timestamp on her last message, 9:14 p.m. Oregon time. It was already past midnight there. I told myself maybe her battery had died. Maybe she got stopped by police and couldn't text, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Around 2 a.m. Tokyo time, my phone buzzed again, a new message. But not from Sophie, from an unknown number with an Oregon area code. The message was short. "Stop involving her. This isn't your story to tell." I froze. There was no name, no signature, but the phrasing. It sounded exactly like something my dad would say. Calm, controlling, final. I tried calling the number, but it went straight to a busy tone. When I tried again, it was disconnected. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark, my laptop open, the police articles and social media threads all blurring together. Every post about Daniel was getting worse. Still in critical condition. Possible head injury. Authorities following new leads. New leads. I started to panic that they'd somehow trace my messages to Sophie, that she'd get dragged into it. I deleted our chat history and all the photos she sent, but that image of the lake house, of my dad standing by the water, was burned into my mind. By morning, I made a decision. I couldn't just sit in Tokyo pretending to be invisible. I had to get ahead of whatever story they were building. I found an American lawyer based in Japan who handled expat cases. Her name was Claire Morrison. She spoke with a steady voice, the kind that made you want to believe her. I told her everything. The birthday, the cupcake, the post, the flight, Daniel, the police. I even sent her screenshots. She listened quietly and then said something that chilled me. "If they've publicly listed you as a person of interest, they might have already issued a notice to U.S. authorities. If you try to fly home, you could be detained at the airport." I asked what I was supposed to do. She said the best option was to contact the U.S. Embassy, explain the situation, and let her coordinate a voluntary statement through official channels. That way, I wouldn't look like I was hiding. I wanted to trust her, but part of me hesitated. My parents had connections. My dad was a city contractor. My mom worked in local administration. They knew people. I didn't know how deep this would go. Still, I had no choice. The next morning, I went to the embassy. Security checked my passport, made copies, and asked why I was there. I said I needed to speak to someone about a family situation involving a police case back home. They sent me to a waiting area. I sat there for almost an hour before someone finally called my name. It wasn't Claire. It was a man in a gray suit who introduced himself as an attaché for citizen services. He asked me to explain everything again, from the start. I told him what I could, though I left out Sophie's part, at least for now. He took notes, nodding slowly. When I finished, he said, "We'll forward your information to the proper authorities and verify your current status. If there's a warrant or notice, we'll inform you immediately." He paused, then added, "Until then, stay reachable, and please don't contact anyone in the US directly." As I left, I noticed him typing something into his phone, his expression unreadable. By the time I returned to my hotel, I had one new message waiting. Unknown number again. Different area code. It said, "She shouldn't have gone there, Ryan. You shouldn't have left." No punctuation this time. Just that. And attached below it, one photo, a blurry shot taken through a car windshield, headlights illuminating the front of Sophie's house. I stared at that photo for so long that the phone dimmed itself. The light from the screen left a faint reflection on the window beside me, and for a second I thought someone was outside the hotel room. I checked, but it was just my reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, terrified. My first instinct was to call Sophie again, but I knew if someone had been watching her house, if that message came from whoever was behind all this, I might make things worse. Instead, I texted one word, "Are you safe?" No reply. I waited, pacing the room, watching the minutes crawl by. Every sound from the hallway made me flinch. A cleaning cart, footsteps, even the elevator bell. My heart wouldn't slow down. After an hour, I got a response. It wasn't Sophie. It was from Claire, the lawyer. She said she'd been contacted by a liaison in the US who confirmed that I was listed as a person of interest in an active investigation. Not a suspect, not yet, but close. The police believed my sudden international departure looked suspicious. I asked if she'd heard anything about Sophie. She said no. There was no mention of anyone by that name in the case file. Then she said something that made me sit down. "Ryan, it's possible someone's monitoring your communications. If you've been receiving messages from unknown numbers, don't reply to them." But the problem was, those messages knew too much. Whoever sent them had photos. The lake house, my dad by the water, now Sophie's home. That meant they weren't random threats. They were personal, and that meant whoever was behind this wasn't guessing. They were involved. I couldn't stop thinking about my dad, him standing by the water, the way he told me not to come back, the calm tone of those texts. I kept trying to tell myself he wouldn't hurt anyone, that he was just trying to protect the family from scandal, but the truth was he'd always been good at control, at silence. When we were kids, Daniel once broke a neighbor's window with a baseball. I remember watching my dad drive over there that night and talk to the neighbor for nearly an hour. The next day, the man apologized to us for causing trouble. Somehow my dad made him feel guilty. That's what he did. He could twist a situation until people questioned their own memories. Maybe that's what he was doing now. I spent the next day glued to my phone. I checked news sites, forums, even Facebook groups from our town. Everyone was speculating. Some people thought Daniel had gotten drunk and fallen off the dock. Others said there'd been a fight, that I'd snapped after being left out of the celebration. The theories got wilder with each comment. And then, late that night, a new update appeared from a local reporter. Police confirmed discovery of new evidence near the dock. Sources close to the investigation state that the object, believed to be a personal item belonging to the victim's brother, was recovered from the lake. My breath caught. I scrolled down and there it was, a blurred photo of something silver, small, round. My old keychain. I hadn't seen it in weeks. I used to keep it on my car keys, a small silver compass my dad gave me when I turned 16. I'd left it on the desk in my room the day I packed for Japan. Someone had planted it. It wasn't even about guilt anymore. It was about control. My parents were building a version of me they could handle. Unstable, jealous, guilty, easier to mourn than to listen to. I didn't know what to do next. Claire told me to stay put, that we'd wait for an official request from the US before taking any steps. But I couldn't sit in that room anymore. I needed to move. So I grabbed my backpack and left. Tokyo was still awake, the streets glowing with neon and late-night chatter. I walked for hours without direction, just moving to stay sane. Eventually, I ended up in front of a 24-hour internet cafe. I went inside, rented a small booth, and logged into an old email I hadn't used in years, one my parents didn't know about. I searched for any sign of Sophie, any local updates, anything that didn't sound rehearsed. That's when I found it. An email sent to that address just an hour earlier. No subject line, no sender name, just a random string of numbers. Inside was a single sentence. If you want to see what really happened, stop trusting your family. And attached below it, a video file. It was labeled Doc Footage 17 Move. For a full minute, I just stared at the file name on the screen. Doc Footage 17 Move. My pulse was so loud in my ears I almost couldn't hear the low hum of the cafe's air conditioning. Part of me wanted to close the laptop and walk out. If the video was real, it could destroy me. But if it wasn't, someone was playing a game I didn't understand. Either way, I had to know. I clicked it. The video opened with static, then a grainy view of the lake house dock at night. The timestamp in the corner read June 14th, 10:43 p.m., the exact night of Daniel's birthday. The water was calm, the lights from the house reflecting across it like broken glass. At first, nothing happened. Just a still shot, soft wind on the microphone. Then two figures stepped into frame. One of them was Daniel. I could tell by his hair, his posture. The other one, taller, broader, wore a hoodie. The hoodie was dark gray. My hoodie. For a second, I thought it was me. The build, the way he moved, everything looked familiar. But as the figure stepped closer to the camera, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. He was wearing the red bracelet, the same one from that photo my parents posted. They stood near the edge of the dock, talking. No audio, just gestures. Daniel looked relaxed at first, then confused. The man in the hoodie reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, shiny, and held it up. Daniel shook his head, stepped back. Then there was a sudden movement. A shove. The camera shook, the view cutting to darkness for a moment before settling again. The dock was empty. No splash, no sound, just the rippling reflection of the house lights. The timestamp kept running. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then the man in the hoodie leaned over the edge, looking down, before turning back toward the house. As he passed under a security light, his face came into view. Just for a second. And it wasn't me. It was my dad. I stopped breathing. I replayed that moment over and over, freezing the frame. It was blurry, low quality, but the jawline, the shape of his nose, there was no doubt. My father was the one on that dock. I pushed my chair back too fast and hit the booth wall. The sound made the guy in the next cubicle glance over, but I couldn't care. My whole body felt disconnected, like I was watching someone else panic. I copied the file onto a flash drive I'd brought for photos, then deleted it from the cafe computer. I didn't even finish the session, just ran out into the night. Outside, Tokyo felt too bright, too alive for what I'd just seen. I walked fast, half running, until I found a quiet side street. I leaned against a vending machine, trying to think. My father had done something to Daniel, and now he was framing me for it. But why? I kept replaying their expressions in that video. Daniel hadn't looked scared, not at first. It was like he didn't realize he was in danger until the last second. And the bracelet, the red one, it hadn't been Daniel's. My dad must have been wearing it that night, which meant when my parents posted that missing photo later, they knew exactly where it came from. They used that image on purpose, to make me look guilty. I texted Claire from a new number, telling her I had evidence that proved I wasn't at the scene. I didn't send the file. Not yet. I didn't trust anyone enough. She replied quickly, "Ryan, please be careful. If this footage is legitimate, we'll need to verify its source before using it. Don't share it online. Don't confront your family." But how could I not? My brother was in a hospital bed, maybe dying, and the man pretending to be a grieving father had done it. I didn't reply. Instead, I went back to my hotel, locked the door, and opened the video one more time. I watched my father's silhouette lean over that dock, calm and deliberate, not frantic, not regretful, just steady. That steadiness, I'd seen it before, when he delivered bad news, when he lied, when he wanted to look like the only sane one in the room. And suddenly, one memory hit me so hard it made my stomach twist. A few months ago, Daniel had mentioned he wanted to move out, to Los Angeles, for college. My dad had told him to wait a year, said it wasn't the right time. I remembered the tension between them at dinner that night. I hadn't thought much of it then. But maybe Daniel didn't wait. Maybe he'd told our dad that night at the lake house that he was leaving anyway. And my dad, the man who couldn't stand losing control, made sure no one else would leave him again. I stayed up until sunrise, replaying every frame, every second of that footage, trying to convince myself there was some other explanation, but there wasn't. When the light started coming through the curtains, I checked my phone again. One new message. Unknown number. Delete the video, Ryan. You don't know what you're doing. No name, no emoji, just the same cold tone as before. And then, a few seconds later, another message appeared. Daniel woke up. For a few seconds, I thought I was hallucinating. That text. Daniel woke up. Didn't make sense. My brother had been in a coma for days. The doctors said it could take weeks, months, maybe never. But if it was true, it changed everything. I tried calling the number that sent the message, but it didn't go through. No ringtone, no error message, just silence. I sent 3 texts back. Who is this? Where is he? Is he okay? But none of them delivered. Still, the idea that Daniel was awake hit me like an electric shock. If he could talk, he could tell the truth. He could clear my name, unless he didn't remember. Or worse, unless my father was already with him. I felt sick thinking about that. I opened my laptop and started searching for any updates from Oregon hospitals. After about 20 minutes, I found it. A short local article published less than an hour ago. Family sources confirm Daniel Harper regains consciousness. That was all it said. No quotes, no details, no mention of me. Just a generic update, probably released by my parents. But then I noticed something strange. The article included a photo of my parents leaving the hospital. My dad was holding a paper cup of coffee, my mom clinging to his arm, both of them smiling. It didn't look like relief. It looked like victory. I couldn't shake the feeling that they already knew what Daniel was going to say. I sat there for a long time, debating what to do. I couldn't go home, not with an investigation still open. I couldn't trust the police, and I definitely couldn't trust my parents. That left Daniel. If I could just talk to him directly, maybe he'd remember. Maybe he'd realize what happened that night. Who pushed him? I opened my messages with Claire and typed, "He woke up. I need to talk to him." She replied after a few minutes, "Ryan, if you contact him directly, it could make things worse. Let me reach out through the embassy first. Please don't act alone." But it was too late for that. I'd already made up my mind. I still had my US passport and enough cash for a one-way ticket. If I landed quietly, maybe I could stay under the radar. I just need to keep my name off the system, pay cash, no checked bags. It was risky. But I couldn't stay in Japan watching my father twist everything while my brother woke up to whatever lies they'd prepared. I booked a flight to Seattle, the closest airport to home. It left in the morning. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept watching that video over and over again, memorizing every frame, every timestamp. I backed it up on 3 separate drives, hid one in my shoe, and sent another to a new encrypted email I'd created just in case. At sunrise, I headed to the airport. My stomach was in knots, but I forced myself to act calm. I checked in at a kiosk, handed over cash, and avoided eye contact with the clerk. No one stopped me. As the plane lifted off, I stared out the window, watching Tokyo shrink beneath the clouds. I kept thinking about Daniel. If he'd opened his eyes yet, if he remembered that night, if my dad was standing beside his bed when he did. 12 hours later, we landed. I made it through customs without issue. Just tired smiles and a stamp in my passport. My name wasn't flagged, not yet. Once I was outside, the cold hit me hard. I rented a cheap car under a fake name, drove south through Washington, then across the Oregon border. Every highway sign felt like a countdown. It was nearly midnight by the time I reached my hometown. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. The same gas stations, the same old strip mall, even the same flickering streetlight outside our neighborhood. I parked 2 blocks away from the hospital. The parking lot lights cast long shadows across the asphalt. I pulled my hoodie up and sat there for a few minutes, watching people come and go. Then I saw her. My mom, still in the same coat from the photo, walking toward the exit with her phone pressed to her ear. I ducked lower in the seat. She looked exhausted but composed, too composed. I waited until she drove off before getting out of the car. My hands were shaking as I walked toward the main entrance. Inside, the front desk clerk asked if I was visiting. I said I was Daniel's cousin, pretending to sound casual. She didn't even check my ID, just pointed me toward the elevator. When I reached the 3rd floor, The hallway was quiet. Room 312. I stopped outside the door and pressed my ear against it. I could hear voices. 2 of them. One was my dad. The other, softer, slower, was Daniel. He was awake. I pushed the door open just enough to see inside. Daniel was sitting up, pale and thin, IV still in his arm. My dad stood beside him, one hand on the bed rail, speaking low. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the look on Daniel's face, uncertain, hesitant, like he was trying to piece something together. Then my dad noticed movement at the door. Our eyes met. For the first time in my life, he looked genuinely surprised. "Ryan," he said quietly. Not angry, not scared, just steady, the way he always was when he needed control. Daniel turned his head, his eyes widening. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Ryan," he whispered, voice raspy, "you were there." My knees nearly gave out, because the way he said it wasn't a question, it was a memory. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. Daniel's voice, weak, certain, cut straight through every bit of denial I had left. "You were there." My dad didn't move. He didn't shout, didn't reach for me. He just stood there, calm as ever, watching the 2 of us like he was waiting for a storm to pass. I stepped into the room anyway. My throat was dry. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a whisper. "Daniel?" "What do you mean?" He blinked slowly, his hand trembling on the blanket. "I saw you," he said. "On the dock." For a second, the room felt like it tilted. I wanted to tell him about the video, the bracelet, everything, but he looked so fragile, like even the sound of my voice was too heavy for him. My dad finally broke the silence. "That's enough," he said quietly, stepping between us. "He needs rest. You shouldn't be here." The tone wasn't anger. It was warning, but I didn't move. I looked at Daniel again. "You saw someone, but it wasn't me. I was already gone. I was at the airport." He frowned, confused. "No, you were arguing with me." He closed his eyes like he was trying to pull the memory into focus. "You were mad. About the party." I shook my head. "I wasn't even there, Dan, you know that. Think." My dad turned to me then, his expression tightening just slightly. "Ryan, enough. You need to leave before you make things worse." It was that same tone I'd heard my whole life. Controlled, measured, final. The one that said, "I own this room." But this time I didn't back down. "He remembers something that's not real," I said. "You made sure of that, didn't you?" My dad's jaw tensed, but he didn't answer. He just gave me that cold stare I'd seen 1,000 times before, the one that made every argument end in silence. Daniel opened his eyes again, confused, scared. "Dad, what's going on?" My father turned to him immediately, softening his voice. "Don't worry about it, son. You've been through a lot. Your brother just needs time to process everything." That sentence, "your brother just needs time to process," was exactly what he'd told teachers, friends, anyone who ever asked why I seemed distant. It was his way of erasing me without ever raising his voice. I took a step closer. "Daniel, listen to me. I have proof. There's a video from the lake house, from the security feed. It shows—" "Stop." My dad's voice was sharp now. "You think showing him some fake video will fix what you did? Fake?" I almost laughed. "You're the one in it." That hit him. Just for a second. His expression didn't change much, but I saw it. A flicker in his eyes. A split second of calculation. He turned to Daniel, his tone shifting instantly. "See? He's confused. He's been sending us strange messages for days. You remember how he gets." Daniel looked between us, lost. "Dad, please. Stop calling him that," I snapped. "You don't get to do that anymore." The room went silent. The heart monitor beeped softly in the background. Then my father smiled, a small, almost pitying smile. "Ryan," he said calmly, "you don't understand what's at stake here. You should have stayed gone." He turned to leave. I moved to block the doorway. My hand was shaking, but I didn't care. "If you walk out of here, I'm going straight to the police with that footage." He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Do you really think they'll believe you? You're the jealous son who ran away after threatening your brother. You fled the country. You've already made my case for me." I wanted to hit him, but I didn't. I couldn't. I just stared at him, realizing how far ahead he'd planned everything. He straightened his jacket, stepped past me, and said softly, "Whatever you think you know, It won't matter once Daniel signs his statement, and then he was gone. Daniel was breathing fast, gripping the edge of the blanket. "Ryan," he whispered. "What's happening?" I sat beside him, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't see me that night. You saw Dad. He was wearing my hoodie. My bracelet was in my room, but it turned up at the dock. They're trying to pin this on me." He looked at me like he wanted to believe it, but doubt was all over his face. "Why would he?" "Because he needs control," I said. "He can't handle losing it. You were leaving. You told him, didn't you?" Daniel hesitated, eyes wide. Then he nodded barely. That was all I needed to hear. I told him I'd come back later, once I figured out what to do next. He looked like he wanted to stop me, but he didn't. When I stepped into the hallway, my hands were still trembling. I could feel eyes on me. Maybe nurses, maybe security. I didn't care. I kept walking until I reached the stairwell. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I opened it. "You should have stayed in Japan. Now it's too late." And attached was a photo, grainy, taken from a distance. It was me, standing outside the hospital. I froze in the stairwell, staring at the photo. It had been taken less than a minute ago. I was wearing the same clothes, same position, even the same fluorescent light glare bouncing off the wall behind me. Someone was watching me. I turned slowly, scanning the corners of the stairwell, the ceiling, the door window. Nothing, just the hum of air vents and the echo of my own breathing. I shoved my phone into my pocket and started moving fast, keeping my head down. Every instinct told me not to take the elevator. I pushed through the heavy stairwell door, heading down 2 floors, then out through an emergency exit into a side parking lot. My chest was tight, my pulse hammering. The lot was mostly empty. A few cars, the dull buzz of the security lights, but one vehicle caught my eye. A dark SUV parked at the far end, engine off, but the faint blue glow of a phone screen inside. My father's car. I ducked behind a row of parked sedans, watching. I couldn't see who was in the driver's seat, but I knew that shape, shoulders squared, still, waiting. I had no plan. No idea what I was doing, but staying still wasn't an option. I circled around to the opposite side of the lot and slipped through the main exit, blending in with a group of nurses heading toward the bus stop. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Once I was out of sight, I opened my camera app and zoomed in from across the street. The SUV was still there, headlights off. I snapped a photo, then sent it straight to Claire. "He's here, at the hospital, watching me." She replied almost instantly. "Get somewhere safe. Don't confront him again. I'll contact the authorities now. Just go." But safe didn't exist anymore. I walked 3 blocks, turned twice, then ducked into a diner that was still open. I picked the booth farthest from the window, facing the door. The waitress asked if I wanted coffee, and I said yes, just to look normal. My reflection in the window looked anything but. While I waited, I opened my laptop again. I still had the flash drive with the video. If Claire could get it verified by the police, maybe this would finally be over. But a part of me didn't trust even that. My father had influence, local officials, business ties. If he got to the right person first, the evidence could vanish. The waitress set down my coffee. I realized my hands were trembling too much to hold the cup. Then my phone buzzed again. Not Claire this time. A new number. "He left the hospital. You need to move." I typed back immediately. "Who is this?" No reply. I turned toward the window. The parking lot across the street was dark, nothing but a few passing cars. But then, faintly, I saw a reflection of movement in the glass behind me. Someone was standing at the diner's entrance. Tall, hooded, still. My body reacted before my brain did. I grabbed the flash drive, stuffed it in my pocket, and bolted for the back door near the bathrooms. I heard the bell above the front door jingle. Someone entering. The alley behind the diner was dim and narrow. I ran until I reached the next block, then ducked behind a dumpster to catch my breath. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I tried to call Claire again, but the signal kept cutting out. When it finally connected, she sounded tense. "Ryan, listen carefully. I contacted the Oregon State Police. They're sending someone to meet you, but you need to give me your exact location." I told her the diner's name and the cross street. She repeated it, then paused. "Stay there. Don't go anywhere. They'll come to you." I wanted to believe her, but I'd learned that every time someone told me to stay put, things got worse. I needed to make sure the video reached someone who couldn't be silenced, so instead of waiting, I found a 24-hour shipping kiosk a few blocks away. I bought a small envelope, labeled it anonymously, and mailed one of the backup drives directly to a national news outlet's investigative division. If something happened to me, the footage would speak for itself. By the time I walked out, the streets were nearly empty. The SUV was gone. For the first time that night, I thought maybe I'd gotten ahead of him, but when I got back to the rental car, there was something tucked under the windshield wiper, a folded piece of paper. I looked around. No one. The lot was silent. I opened it under the yellow parking light. The handwriting was sharp and familiar, my dad's. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Daniel is safe. Come home and we'll fix this together. You don't want to end up like her. My vision blurred. My mother. I hadn't seen her leave the hospital with him, and for the first time that night I realized he hadn't mentioned her once. The note crumpled in my hand before I realized I was squeezing it too hard. You don't want to end up like her. I must have read that line a dozen times. Every time it made my skin crawl. I sat behind the wheel for nearly 10 minutes, staring at the hospital across the street. There were no lights in the window of Daniel's room anymore. No sign of my mom's car. Nothing. I told myself she was fine. Maybe resting, maybe home, but that sentence on the note wouldn't let me believe it. I unfolded the paper again, looking at the handwriting. It was definitely his. The way he pressed too hard on the downward strokes, the slightly slanted E. He'd written hundreds of notes like that when we were kids. Reminders, instructions, little control mechanisms dressed as care. But this one wasn't about control anymore. It sounded like a threat. I pulled out my phone and texted Claire. He left a note on my car. Said something about my mom. "She's missing," she replied quickly. "Stay where you are. Police are on their way. Don't engage him again." I couldn't do that. I knew what stay put meant with my dad. It meant wait until he decided how the story ends. So I drove. The streets were empty, the kind of late-night quiet that made every stoplight feel too long. I passed the old gas station, the bakery that closed down 2 years ago, the sign for our neighborhood. Everything looked the same but felt wrong, like the town itself knew what had happened. When I turned onto our street, I killed the headlights halfway down the block. The house was dark, curtains drawn, no movement. I parked 2 houses away and sat there, gripping the steering wheel. I tried to remember if my mom had texted me at all since I'd come back. She hadn't. All the messages had been from my dad. That silence, that absence, felt heavier than anything. After a few minutes, I got out and walked up the driveway. Every sound felt too loud, the crunch of gravel, the faint creak of the gate. I paused at the front door, listening. Nothing. The spare key was still under the 3rd step, exactly where it had been for years. He never expected me to come back. Inside, the air smelled faintly like cleaning products and something metallic. The kitchen lights were off, but the fridge hummed quietly. Everything was perfectly in place. No mess, no struggle, just that unnatural order my dad always demanded. I checked the living room. Empty. My mom's mug was on the table, half full of tea that had gone cold. Then I noticed the faint trail of something on the floor, a few drops of dark liquid leading toward the hallway. My chest tightened. I followed them, slow and careful, until I reached the laundry room door. It was slightly open. I pushed it wider. No body, no blood, but her phone was there. Lying face down beside the washing machine, screen cracked, still buzzing faintly with missed calls. My legs almost gave out. I picked it up. The last text she'd received was from my dad, just 2 words, "Come outside." The timestamp was 10:58 p.m., less than an hour before I'd arrived at the hospital. I sank against the wall, trying to think. He must have brought her with him. Maybe she'd seen too much. Maybe she'd started asking questions. That's when headlights flashed across the front window, a car pulling into the driveway. I ducked behind the laundry room door, heart slamming in my chest. Footsteps on the porch, the lock turning, then his voice. Calm, steady, like always. "Ryan, if you're here, let's talk. Don't do anything stupid." I didn't move. He walked slowly through the living room, his shoes barely making a sound. "You didn't have to come back," he said. "You could have stayed in Japan, lived your life, but you couldn't leave it alone, could you?" I could see his shadow stretch across the hallway, long and deliberate. "You think that video changes anything?" he continued. "It doesn't. People believe what they're told, not what they see. And you—" His tone sharpened slightly. "You've always been easy to discredit." He stopped right outside the laundry room door. I held my breath. Then he said softly, You're not the first one who tried to fight me, but you'll be the last. The doorknob started to turn. I backed up, gripping my phone so hard it nearly cracked. My thumb hovered over the screen, ready to hit record. The door opened halfway. And then, suddenly, a voice shouted from outside. "Police! Step back!" Red and blue lights exploded through the front windows. My dad froze. For the first time, I saw something on his face I'd never seen before. Not calm, not control, just fear. He raised his hands slowly, but his eyes found me in the shadows, cold, furious. As the officers moved in, cuffing him, one of them asked if anyone else was inside. I stepped forward, still shaking. "My mom," I said. "She's missing." They searched the property for nearly an hour. The backyard, the garage, the basement, and then one of the officers called out from behind the shed. They found her car keys in the grass, and beside them, the red bracelet. When the officer walked back holding that red bracelet in a plastic evidence bag, everything inside me went quiet. That simple loop of woven thread was the last missing piece, and seeing it there, taut, bright under the flashlight, made my stomach drop. My mom's car keys were still damp, bits of dirt pressed into the rubber. The officer said they'd been there a while, maybe since last night. He didn't say what I was already thinking. If she dropped them, she probably hadn't gone far after that. They searched the yard until dawn. Flashlights swept through the hedges, the flower beds, the edge of the woods that ran behind our house. Every time someone called out, I felt my knees lock, waiting to hear her name. When they finally came back empty-handed, the senior detective told me she'd probably been forced into a vehicle.
"Do you have any idea where your father might go when he wants to be alone?" he asked. I did. He had a small workshop off an old service road, about 15 minutes out of town. Technically still part of his company's property. He used to take me there when I was a kid to teach responsibility. They sent a unit out there immediately. I wasn't supposed to follow, but I did. The drive felt endless. The sky was starting to lighten, the kind of gray that makes everything look colorless.
I followed 2 police cruisers down the winding road until the warehouse came into view. Tin siding, single light glowing above the door. The officers went in first. I stayed by the car, gripping the edge of the roof so hard my knuckles hurt. Then one of them waved me over. Inside smelled like oil and metal. My dad's tools were still lined up in perfect order, every wrench hung by size. In the corner, near an old workbench, was my mother's coat draped over a chair. She was sitting there, alive, shivering, eyes wide. When she saw me, she started crying so hard she couldn't speak. I ran to her before the officers could stop me. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't know what else to do. It took a while before the words made sense. She said my dad had called her outside after leaving the hospital. He told her I was back, that I'd lost it, that he needed her to help him end this before Ryan ruined everything. When she realized what he meant, she tried to get away. He took her keys, told her to stay put while he handled things. She waited in the car for hours before sneaking here, to the one place she thought he wouldn't check. When the officers told her he was already in custody, she broke down again. Relief, exhaustion, everything at once. They took her statement at the station while I sat in the hallway staring at the floor. I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was empty. By mid-morning, they showed me the official evidence list, the bracelet, the footage, the note, my mom's testimony. It was enough to hold him on multiple charges. Claire called soon after. She said the footage had already been authenticated. It was real. The news outlet I'd mailed the copy to had also contacted authorities. They'd received the drive before I left the diner. It was over. At least, that's what everyone kept saying. A few hours later, I went back to the hospital. Daniel was awake, sitting up, staring at the TV but not really watching it. When he saw me, he looked nervous, unsure whether he should be grateful or afraid. "I saw the news," he said quietly. "They said Dad..." He didn't finish. I sat beside him. "You remembered wrong," I said gently. "You saw the hoodie, not me." He nodded slowly, tears starting to spill. "I'm sorry. I thought it was you. He told me you'd threatened him that night." "That's what he does," I said. "He tells stories until they sound like truth." We sat in silence for a while. Machines beeped softly. Nurses' voices echoed down the hall. It felt unreal, like we were in someone else's life. Finally, Daniel asked, "What happens now?" I didn't have an answer. When I left the hospital, the sky was clear for the first time in days. Reporters were already outside the police station across town. My family's photo, the one from the fake post, was everywhere. I drove until the road turned into highway, and the houses disappeared behind me. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay. For the first time in my life, there was no one left to tell me what to do, no voice deciding what my story should be. I rolled down the window, let the cold air hit my face, and kept driving. Behind me, the morning news started reporting that the Harper family case was officially being transferred to state prosecutors. My father would be in custody for a long time. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it just felt like silence. Somewhere between 1 mile marker and the next, my phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. You did the right thing. Don't stop now. No name, no trace. I stared at it until the screen went dark. Then I deleted the message, set the phone face down, and kept driving toward nowhere in particular.